Holy Nick Saban retired. I didn't even think it was possible. You didn't think it was possible. Alabama no longer has a head coach for the first time since 2007 when Nick Saban began what can only be described as tyranny, a veritable reign of terror. 2 generations of football coaches and players all held beneath the thumb of one man and one program, the Alabama Crimson Tide and Nick Saban. I'm flabbergasted. You're flabbergasted. We're all speechless, but we're going to try to find the words anyway because it is not often in life, in history, or in anything else to say at one moment we were here and now we are there. This is one of those moments. College football changed when Nick Saban became a head coach, and when he became the head coach at Alabama, it will forever be different now that he is no longer going to be the overlord of this sport. There is no Mount Rushmore. There's Nick Saban. Everyone else is bartering for second and third place somewhere else off the mountain. I reject the entire metaphor of considering that there is a Mount Rushmore because with 7 national titles in this era, given all of the capital, energy, and competition present in college football, everything invested, and how intense it is, no one has delivered better results in the modern era than Nick Saban. And I say modern because we're talking about when you compare him to everybody else, this is a post-integration scenario where everyone can play college football. It is a post-Nick Saban scenario, which means I think we have to step back and consider everything that is now different because of who he is. There are others who turned recruiting into a 25/8 job where 25 hours a day and 8 days a week you were recruiting, and that became the lifeblood of the program more so than anything else and more so than recruiting at any time in the history of college football. Nick Saban is responsible for that. He himself has said, "You may outcoach me, but you will never ever out recruit me." Pete Carroll and Urban Meyer and some other coaches, they're all accomplices in this. But if you want to look at the ringleader of who turned recruiting into a year-round, full-time 61 minutes out of the clock obsession, it's Nick Saban. He's responsible for that. You might also want to say, well, when did things become so complex in college football? When did you begin to see these kind of things? When Nick Saban became head coach. Nick Saban saw everything that college football was and brought all of his tricks from the NFL and not only figured out a way to teach them to college students and to college athletes, he found a way to make them work and to work well. And not just that, but to build an entire process around them. He changed the way things work on the field, and he changed the way he did things on multiple occasions. Nick Saban, when they began, ran a ball control, smashy, defense first kind of football where if you got a 14-point lead or if you got a 21-point lead, you sat on the ball, you took the air out of the game, and you made it as short a contest as possible. It may have been unwatchable at times. It may have been antithetical to everything you consider entertainment in football, unless you like brutality and asphyxiating defense. But it won. And then when that no longer worked, and people began to catch up to it, and spread offenses began to tear things up, his reaction was not to double down on his old tactics, but instead to adapt and to adjust. We're now a decade removed from Lane Kiffin becoming the offensive coordinator at Alabama. The impossibility of that man working under that man. It happened because Nick Saban knew Alabama could no longer play the same style of football. They had to adjust. They had to recruit skilled players. Sometimes when coaches decide to do this, they might get a pretty good guy at quarterback, and they might get some pretty good guys at wide receiver. And instead, Alabama, which was already salting the rosters of the NFL with more talent than any other program because of their ability to identify, recruit, and retain talent, well, now they were doing that at wide receiver. And at quarterback, they soon began cranking out Heisman winners, Devontae Smith, Tua Tagovailoa. These are all players who thrived in that system, a system that Nick Saban would have found abhorrent just a full decade earlier, but now realized was totally necessary. Whatever you did, he learned and did better. And he did that for longer than any coach in the history of the game. Nick Saban is as complex a college football character you will find. You will find moments where he is seemingly inhuman, just incapable of emotion relating to others or really caring about anything but the outcome of the game. My favorite moments are always in blowouts where Alabama was up by 35 or 42 and he's red-faced and tearing into someone over a detail of the game so small that everyone else missed it except for Nick Saban. I like it when he was asked a question and responded by saying, "I'm not gonna pick, so quit asking." That's one of my favorite ones. Anytime that Nick Saban would blow up in a press conference, he had this trick where his hands would start moving and you'd hear him talking and he'd start hitting the podium and he gets a little bit louder and then he starts banging the podium and then he gets a little bit louder and he talks about how the program needs to develop and everyone needs to be on the same page and breathe with the same breath and think with the same mind and live with one heartbeat. And that's, you guys don't get it because you're not out there and you don't understand the players. And then at the end of it, he'd wait and go, "I bet y'all are scared to ask me another question." A man who at no time failed to understand who he was speaking to and what the purpose was. He was talking to the team. He's trying to make a point to them. Everyone else was incidental or someone he could use to get that message across to his team. I think the thing that makes him amazing is that singular focus. I've never seen a coach so focused and so able to build his world around him in the likeness that he desired. There is nobody who comes close to that. And nobody who, while doing all of that, could speak to so many different people in so many different ways and always get exactly the thing he needed out of the situation. My guess at the motivation for Nick Saban leaving now is that he either has an opportunity that he sees as his transition into a full retirement, because the notion of this man, a guy so obsessed with his job that he had a button in his desk to open the door so that he did not have to waste the 2 seconds to get up and open said door and then sit back down. The man so organized that he was able to say, "Boys, let's go," and meet a plane on the tarmac so they could go to a charity golf tournament an hour after they finished practice, and to have the entire machine arranged around him. I don't see that man gently sliding into a happy, serene, and easy retirement. That's a person with a lot of energy, a person with a lot of interest in what they do, and a person who has been doing that one thing now for the better part of 50 years, 60 years. It's amazing to me that somebody like that, we would say, "Oh, he's just retiring." No, 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 no. There's something out there to take his focus. I don't know if it's TV. By the way, if it is TV, come in closer. We're all losing our jobs because he is so good. The man is an obsessive teacher and he is so good at it that if you've ever watched any of his video explanations, it not only made you smarter, it made you a little more motivated. It made you a little more ready to take on the day, because he earned all those paychecks for a reason. He's the best at that too. This wasn't a guy who was just a recruiter. It wasn't a guy who was just a teacher. It wasn't a guy who was just a manager. He somehow managed to be the best at all three elements of the job. It is very, very weird to find somebody who has been this dominant and in such a total fashion, cold, brutal, exacting football, and to get sentimental over it. But I kind of am. This is a passing. This is a moment of change. This is a fracture, a dividing point in the fossil record of college football, where before things were one way and afterwards they're going to be markedly different. Alabama's always going to be good. I have no problem saying that. I don't think they will be the same. The next person faces an immense challenge. I think that there are going to be shifts. There are going to be losses and gains for teams and opponents and rivals of Alabama, particularly with an expanding SEC and with a bunch of younger coaches coming in to compete against them. I think that you're going to see different approaches that don't fit what Nick Saban did, because no one can do that. Ultimately, when you saw his assistants go to different programs, there have been mixed results all over the place. But it's a lot like Bill Belichick, who, Nick Saban worked with for a long time. If you want those results, you have to go get that guy. That guy's gone. And everything he brought to the game is also gone. And it's going to be markedly different because I don't think they make many Nick Sabans.